Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to another presentation of the online ColdFusion Meetup. I'm Charlie Earhart, and I'll be your host for the next hour or so. And in this edition of the Meetup, our 311th, being recorded on Thursday, November 21st, 2024 at noon U.S. Eastern Time, we have Charvi Dhoot, who is the ColdFusion product manager, and she'll be presenting on ColdFusion 2025, or as the title is, ColdFusion Horizons, Unveiling 2025, Features and Future Roadmap Insights. So with that, Charlie, thanks very much for coming on. And it's funny because I often hear people at conferences and stuff say Charvi, and if they're a little quick in saying it, I sometimes wonder if they're saying Charlie. So we have to worry about that once in a while. No, that was Charvi who said that. She's the official voice, not me. Mm-hmm. But anyway, welcome. I'm glad to have you on, and go ahead and take it away.
Great. Okay. Firstly, Charlie, it's an honor to be confused with your name. And then secondly, Horizons is very inspired by hidden gems. Let me tell you that too.
Sweet. Thank you, man.
Hello all. I am Charvi. I'm the Senior Product Manager at Adobe ColdFusion. And with that, let me share my screen because as we get started into the talk. So there you go. All right. Welcome everybody to this talk on Roadmap Insights. Targeted as elevating the old and pioneering innovation with the new. What Charlie did not tell you is I'm also a very big movie and TV show buff. And I think this quote from Ted Lasso fits really well for what a journey it has been for us to get out yet another release of ColdFusion for all of you. For those of you who do not know about this show, Ted Lasso is a phenomenal show about the kind of things one can achieve only if they truly believe and have the attitude for it. Well, ColdFusion is a miraculous community from whatever I've seen of it. And I truly believe that all of us collectively are making miracles happen every day. If there's one thing that I would like to change is the legacy tag that's associated with this language. And I hope we can all persevere and work towards doing that. And I feel that we're already doing that as we continue to use the product due to the sheer value it continues to deliver. Now, in the light of the upcoming release of ColdFusion, just one sec. Just bring up my screen once again.
Yes, she meant to hit the hide button and she hit the stop sharing button by mistake.
Yeah, sorry. There you go. Now, in the light of the upcoming release of ColdFusion, I would like to talk about the following topics in today's talk. I'm going to cover our approach as we look towards the future releases for ColdFusion. We are going to talk also about the features and upgrades designed for ColdFusion 2025. We're going to take a peek at the calendar for the new release. So there's lots of exciting events that have been planned and lots of exciting activities around this release. And there's also going to be a small ask that I have from the community and our customers. So I'm going to begin with my talk.
By the way, you still have that hide button you want to click. It's down in the bottom middle.
There you go.
There.
Are we good? No. Yeah. Sorry. Well, CF 2025, what's really coming? It is a step into the future. We are thinking more about stability as we go along into the future. It's about making sure there are consistent security and OEM upgrades. You would have seen the past year a lot of activity around security, as well as making sure that the OEM upgrades are also consistently released. That you'll see with CF25 particularly, but with security, we've been extremely consistent. I will also talk or dig a little deeper into what our processes have been with regards to security as we go along in this talk and keep security in the focus in one of the slides. Then there's also a lot of housekeeping work that has been done to make sure that there can be a proper support and maintainability on the platform. This has been, again, a very conscious effort in making sure you are receiving a more stable platform. There's also more frequent releases that are going to come, which means there's going to be more continuous innovation. There's going to be faster time to market to get you all the features that you were waiting for, especially in this day and age, right? Like when you think about all the newer things that are happening around, it's just nicer to have them sooner so that you can all try out and build your applications with these features that get released in the major versions. The third aspect is obviously making sure that whatever is released is easier to use. It's easy for you to install, migrate your setups, also have your automation going, have your DevOps and CI/CD working well. So all of those things put together to make sure there's good ease of use coming your way. And the fourth one, obviously, is how do we deliver more value with the platform, which means more improvements in the core libraries, more feature upgrades, better language features, lots of modernization with more focus on cloud and container-oriented development, and also more DevOps features so that you can have a better experience with the platform overall. So, well, that's our approach when we're thinking about future releases as well. Now, the very first feature that's getting released with ColdFusion 2025 is a charting library upgrade. It's a major revamp into the library to make it more modern, to support formats, styling, and several other features that were missing in the library before, but also to upgrade it from a perspective that you find that you do not have to go outside of the ColdFusion ecosystem to develop any of your charts and dashboards. It's also a very important use case as such because, well, almost all applications have some or the other need of building a dashboard or to put together a chart to display the data in their applications or any business data or any application data that they want to represent graphically. What's coming is new formats, more performant formats, as we would like to call them, which is HTML5 and SVG. So there's also the server-side rendering for SVG that's available. So then if you have to generate those on the server side, that's available too as well. There's styling also coming in, which means there are default built-in themes. I will show you a demo of what I mean, but that pretty much means that you will be able to change the look and feel of your charts just by changing one variable. There's also some custom styling templates, Adobe templates, that we will be providing so that you can select from built-in themes to change the look and feel of your dashboards. We are also introducing animations, again, an attempt to make sure the user experience overall is well delivered when you're building using our charting library. There's also support for more data types, which means the missing data types for time series, currency, percentage, date, also short notations like 1,000, scientific notations, those are all going to get supported. That's just the way in which data can be represented better on the charts. There's also addition of some of the missing chart types that were not there before, which is the histogram, box plot, floating bar chart, some charts that you would probably normally need to use but would not find them into the library. So we've introduced all of them. We've pretty much covered as much as we could with regards to the missing charts. But if you do find something that we've not covered, please do reach out to us, and we'd be happy to include that in the next update. There's also features. I'm going to announce the beta, which is also somewhere where you could leave that feedback for us. There are features like markers, rules, performance. That's just markers and rules are ways in which you can highlight some of the data anomalies into the charts. And then also there's performance-oriented features, which makes sure that if you have a lot of data items on your charts, then it's easy to represent these. If you were, if you needed the charts to be loading faster, then the performance-oriented features could help you with that in that aspect as well. We'll do a quick demo with regards to some of the features that I spoke about. And let me share my screen again for that. So I have here is a dashboard I put together using the charting library. What I've also used in this dashboard is a feature called the chart set, which is something that will render all of the charts in one container. So if you have a use case to export this chart and then put it together, put this entire dashboard and put it together in a mail or something, then this is going to be in a single container, which makes it simpler. Now, in this chart, you will see various charts, but if I just wanted to change the look and feel of this chart, I have another demo, which let's use this one. So with just, I'll show you in the code as well, but then what happens is with just one variable change, I was able to change the look and feel of the chart entirely. Now, if I wanted to use a light theme, then I have another theme available to me, or let me just use the feast. So yeah, this is another built-in theme that you can see. And not just this, if we were to, there are lots of exciting themes that have been put together for your use. And not just that, there's some amount of extensibility given to the theme as well through this documentation that we'll be creating, which helps you, let's say, if you had a sequential data type within the theme that you wanted to, if you had like a sequential data to be represented in a chart, then we've given you options that you could use in terms of color schemes within the theme itself also in this documentation. Now, in terms of the code, this really means that basically there's just one variable change. You specify the theme into your chart, and that's it. You can then be able to just change the look and feel of your charts entirely. Now, in addition to this, I also spoke about the different the animation aspect. So I think like when I'll just reload this chart, you'll be able to see that also. So if you see this, I've delayed the animation a bit, but then you can control the speed and all the other aspects about the animation in terms of which direction it'll come from, how it'll appear, how soon it'll appear, those kind of detailings as well. So that's all available within the library as well. It just adds a little more, enhanced user experience overall. There's also support for data types, like I spoke. So, but before data types, let's also talk about the rules and markers. Now, if you wanted to like put together a rule which said any value that's lower than 40, please highlight the chart in red. So you see a thin red line here, but that's basically that if there's any data anomaly that you want to highlight particularly, then you can put it together in a rule, and then you can show your graph to have that rule highlighted or those data values highlighted as well. It's also the marker that you see, which is set up on value equal to 30, but you could have markers which are like representing an area within this chart. And also you see that currently it's been marked at 30. So then there's like a clear demarcation of all the values above 30 and below 30, which is what a marker will help you achieve. In addition to that, I spoke about data formatting. Let's just take a look at a demo for data formatting. So you can see that there's a short notation here, which is representing 1,000 with K. There's scientific notation. So it's just the way in which you can represent data. You can also set in decimal points to your data. So all of the features that were not available. So this is the right side, which says when you had this before versus now, when you can actually put in more formatting into the data that you're representing on your charts. And that's just easier to consume as data, right? So those are features that we've newly introduced as well. Getting back to my presentation. We looked at the demo. We spoke about the built-in themes. Just a quick preview of how themes can literally change the look and feel of your dashboard. Now, the other area that we've touched base upon is container DevOps. We've seen a lot of shift into deploying applications on containers. It's super simple because you are not tied to any specific setup, or you can move your applications more easily from one machine to the other, and it's also easier for you to set up auto scaling within a container setup. So from that perspective, it's useful to continue to build on this, especially due to the kind of growth we've seen with regards to customers moving their setups on containerized platforms for deployment of their applications. Now, what's coming is security features. Again, from a perspective of if you had passwords for your ColdFusion instances and you needed this password to be securely transferred over the network for your, let's say, cluster of containers that you want to launch, or even a single service for that matter, but over the network, this needed to be stored in a secure manner, then it's possible to do that via Docker secrets. And that's a Docker Swarm feature. Docker Swarm is, again, a way in which you can orchestrate your container clusters, but you can very well launch just one single service. It's just that the secrets over the network would be stored in an encrypted format, and hence less vulnerable, basically not vulnerable to attacks. Then the second thing is introducing the lockdown for containers as well. So that's coming into the security features. There's also easy install, which means Docker configs are now going to be available. There's going to be a CF config CF config that you can configure for putting all of your installation settings. I'll show you a small demo of how you can actually configure these configurations, your installation configurations, so that again, if you had a service to launch or auto scale, or also like clusters, multiple clusters to launch, then it would be very easy for you to like put this up in a config file and have all of the clusters reference the same config file while launching, so that their installation settings are via this config file rather than you having to specify them while launching the container. You wouldn't have to do this manually. It could be via a CLI, and you just have to specify the config file for them to launch. In addition to this, let's say if you do not want the same config file to be used across the different clusters of containers that you're launching, then you can also configure individual settings within the configuration file. So all of those settings are also available as separate configs. I will show you what I mean by that. But basically, like each setting in the config is also something that you can configure separately for your cluster of containers or like a single node. And then that allows you to have different installation settings for different containers that you're launching within your cluster or network also. We're also introducing some features that are going to make it easier for you to manage your containerized setups. So central config server is now going to be available on the containers as well. This feature was an on-prem feature only before, but now we're going to make that available for containers. And that's super useful when you are looking at propagating settings, which are application settings during runtime for your, for any applications that you're running. Then the second thing is centralized logging. We've just made some changes in the driver to make sure that the logs can be collected by drivers like Splunk or any other tool that you may be using to like collect your logs, let's say. Or if you're not using one, then it's good for you to be able to collect the logs together in one in a logging tool. And especially because when you're looking at a cluster of services, like a set of containers, and you need to like put together all of the logs together in one central place so that you can analyze what went wrong within, let's say, applications that you were running on multiple different deployments over different containers, then it's super useful to have like a centralized interface through which you'll be tracking this. So from that perspective, this is useful for you to be able to track that. In addition to this, we're also introducing images for Mac and Windows. So we had only Linux images before, but now you'll have these two images also. There's support added for platforms like Podman, Red Hat OpenShift, the Azure Container Services, and these are just useful. If you're using a different container service and you need your containers to be running on that environment, then it's something that we can support. If you have needs for more platforms, then do reach out. We can add support for those as well as we go along and develop more into the DevOps side of things. There's also integration with the Kubernetes secrets and the Kubernetes config maps. I spoke about the logging drivers. It's just, you can have logs in any of these formats. You can have the logs to be stored locally or in JSON format, or you could import them into your Splunk and then have a centralized logging server also. Lastly, there's also a good performance benefit that's coming into the containers, which is literally a startup time optimization of nearly 50%. That's going to be super useful when you're looking at scaling your services and you need that quick boost. So in that sense, the performance benefits are going to be extremely useful. Let me just quickly show you a demo of how you can set up your configs and secrets, and then how these can be used over the network to launch multiple services. I have set up a Portainer demo for this. That's just because it's easier to visualize how these settings would appear, but you could very well use, launch these services right from command line. You don't need a UI like a Portainer to run or launch any of these, right? So now let's look at secrets. This was a ColdFusion password that's been stored as an encrypted string here that you can see. And now when I would need to launch a service, which is a container node, when I'm configuring the service, I can specify, let's say, what's the config, the secret's going to be. And I can add in a secret and I can specify which secret it's going to be. So I'm going to say password, and then I'm going to be able to launch that. Now, in terms of configs also, you need to specify, let's say, like a config file. And in this config file, these are the acceptable strings, and you'll get a documentation for that. You can specify the installation settings. And then again, when you're launching a service, you have to specify, let's say, the configs. And then at that point of time, it'll pick up whenever it's launching or whenever it's scaling. Also, whenever it's having, like, if you've set up a load balancer and replicas of the same service, then again, it'll pick up from the same config file again. So you don't have to do any of the manual work. It'll just be automatically picked from the CF config file. In addition to this, what I also spoke about was each of these settings that you see, accept EULA, setup script, enable secure profile. If you did not want the container service to pick up from a CF config file, but you needed to specify these individually, then you can go ahead and do that also by just, whenever you're launching the service, you can specify the configs. You can continue just adding multiple configs. And then you can have a value specified, like just the accept EULA. And then you can specify the config like that as well. So you needn't just like use a central config file. You can also have different settings configured for each of the values in the config file that I'd shown just before also, and then reference them within your service. I also spoke about the centralized logging. So let's say this is a Splunk tool, and let's say we have two sources here. So I have the demo one, and if I launch another container, then all of my sources would, so if you see that this is what I could search up, and then I have logs coming in only from the demo one. But if I had another service also, I could come in, I could point it to like start logging into the same Splunk server, and the interface would have logs for both the services. And I could then filter out the specific service out as well, and then see the logs for one of the services or both of the services as I'd want to. Now, I spoke about the central config server, and I want to dedicate some time specifically on the central config server, on the utility of this. It is extremely useful when you're looking to manage a cluster of services, a cluster of containers, especially when you are managing different environments also. So on ColdFusion, we provide you the ability to have a production instance, also a staging server, testing server. So different servers would need at different points to have different CF settings as well, especially when you're kind of like trying out things, building things in the development mode, and then you're transferring them to production for deployment, right? So it's extremely useful to have certain settings being changed on the development side and then have them propagated into the production. So the central config server gives you the ability to actually have different set of settings for each of the different environments. And not just that, for a cluster, which is, let's say, the staging cluster. And I'm saying cluster because let's say you can have 2 staging containers, and you can decide to have 3 production containers, and you can decide to manage the staging containers that we spoke about, both of them to have shared settings, and the production one also to have shared settings. And then during runtime, if you needed to change any settings in either of the environments, you can use the central configuration server to propagate settings on all of the nodes within that particular set cluster, right? And you can do that separately for both the environments, so that if you don't want to touch anything in the production one, then you can just put it on the staging side and not touch the production settings. Not just that, it'll allow you to maintain a version history of all the changes. So if you needed to roll back any of the settings through the version history that this maintains, you just have to like pick a different older version, and these settings would be propagated on the cluster real time. And then you can test out your changes and decide if you need to move back again to the newer version, or any of the debugging that you want to do with it, right? So that's available to you It stores all of the different package settings, so you can apply any of the package settings also via the central config server. So all of the application settings that you would need to be available on the application server side for you, with all of the features that ColdFusion offers in the different packages, all of those are available in the central config server. So it's just that, everything that you need to configure would be available there, and you can utilize the server for doing that. I did the demo for the secrets in the config and the centralized logging as well. Now, another core library that's undergoing a major upgrade is CF Spreadsheet. We've added support for performance-oriented features, which is streaming and async. Now, these are super useful, especially because earlier when you had to process large files, you had to chunk them up, and then these chunks had to be individually processed and then re-put together to then form the final output. But with streaming and async support, you would be able to do this. The manual chunking, when I say manual, you'd still be doing this in code, but you'd have to think through all the logic to chunk it and then apply the changes and then put it all together. But with streaming, you don't have to do that. You would have the ability to just specify that you need it to be streamed, and then it would do the chunking automatically on its own and make the changes that you need, and also give you the final output without having to do any of that effort to chunk it logically that you were doing before. In addition to this, you would also have support for async, which means if you didn't want to block your main thread and you wanted to put this on a background thread, then that's available to you via async. There's also support for CSV, which was not there before. I'm surprised that there was no support for CSV before, but I'm very glad that we've introduced it this time around, especially because it's such a common format for processing spreadsheet-oriented data. And also it's a very performant format in itself. And then we've added lots of data types that will help you process CSVs better. So when the beta launches, you'll have access to all of that. But basically, it'll help you change CSV data into arrays, Java arrays, and different other formats or query, so that it's easier for you to read in and process CSV data more easily this time around. There's also features added for styling and formatting. What I mean by styling and formatting is you would need, let's say, different ways in which you can change the way your spreadsheet, there are links added into the data, or there are print guidelines added into the data. You may want to add a header image to the printed version of the spreadsheet. I will show some demos around this, but basically newer styling and formatting functions will help you achieve all of those. We basically looked at some of the use cases that customers had with regards to these styling and formatting functions that they needed and added these 60 plus new functions. But if you have any requirement for other functions as well, please do reach out. I will showcase a mini demo on what I mean when I say styling and formatting. And then, you'll get the idea. And maybe if you have more requirements, you'll convey that to us during the beta program. The streaming function's performance impact is such that earlier, even files greater than 4 MB could not be processed without streaming, but now files of 27 MB or more also we were able to process in less than 2 minutes in a synchronous way, and in async, we could have the future returned within 100 milliseconds itself. In terms of CSV processing improvements, we've obviously added the missing functionality for processing CSVs, and we improved upon the quality and speed of CSV processing by giving you different data types that we're introducing, as well as leveraging the Java platform for providing that too. Now, in terms of just one interesting thing that we came across was, we came across a post where someone posted saying there's hundreds of millions of rows of semi-clean CSV data, and we would like to convert that into a query. And how do we go about doing that? Especially because Python was giving them a lot of errors. And when we leveraged the library that we just built, the CSV read function was able to process these millions of data worth of CSV data in about an hour or so without any errors. And we tried this multiple times also. The code did not break at any point. And not just that, if you had further processing also, like, there's something like an iterable object that we've introduced, which can iterate through the CSV object that you that you have when you read through a CSV file. Then it's easy to iterate and then do further manipulations also. So all of that was possible within an hour, and the code did not break at any point of time. So that's the utility that this new edition is going to be able to provide to you, and I hope you find value in it. Also, the beta is going to have lots of exciting demos of all the new functions that have come in. So let's just have our evangelist speak for that.
Technical evangelist for Adobe ColdFusion here with a quick shot preview of some of the things that are coming in just a couple of weeks in the beta 1 drop. So what you're seeing here is just our internal GitHub, where our engineers are currently doing some code review and looking over to see if they can add some features to this wonderful demo app that you're going to be able to play with that leverages a bunch of the new features inside of ColdFusion 25 during the beta. I've got one that does a bunch of really fun stuff with CSVs, and I got another one that's a charting playground. So stay tuned, a couple of weeks out. I'll see you then.
Well, first week of December is when beta's out, and all of our demo code's going to be hosted in public Git repos this time. So you're going to have access to all of the demo codes and the demo applications that are getting built. It's just easier for you to understand how to use these functions in our applications when we'll be sharing such code demos. And that's our attempt further into being able to, have a better documentation, have better examples delivered to you so that you can consume these features much more sooner and easily. Now, another feature that's coming in 25 is the MS Graph API integration for 2 different use cases. One of them is the authentication and the authorization flow. It's just easier for you to build SSO-related flows when you have that option, especially when your application needs to interact with MS365, any of the applications like calendar, mail, things like that. But if you have the authentication authorization flows supported, so then that would be useful for that purpose. So we had the authorization code grant flow, which was like previously available, now integrated with the MS Graph. In addition to that, we also have the refresh token flow and the client credentials flow supported. I will talk more about like what these flows would mean when you're building your applications briefly in the next slide. And the second aspect that we built upon, the second use case that we are supporting with this integration is the user management side of things. So which means if you had any LDAP on cloud, I would like to call that an LDAP on cloud, which means almost all applications have a need for maintaining their user database, their profile data and all of that into, let's say, some cloud-based, identity manager platform. And there are lots of platforms like Okta, even Google supports a Google Entity Manager, and there's Azure Active Directory. So now what we've done is, with regards to this MS Graph integration that we had, we also integrated the Azure Active Directory service within the MS Graph. That will help you create and manage your application users and their groups and permissions and their profiles. Now that's particularly useful when you want to maintain your user database that needs to access the applications that you've built. And these applications could very well be on-prem also or completely on cloud. But yes, if you wanted to maintain your user data on some cloud location for just better safety with regards to your data, then you can do that using this integration with, and you can use ColdFusion functions to be able to do that. I will also showcase like what I mean by this Active Directory through an interface screenshot that I have with regards to like basically how do you create the users and how do you keep them on a cloud location. And then obviously all of these will be available as functions. So if you can code this up, like creating, managing users would be possible to code up using ColdFusion functions because of the new library that we've built. Now, when the authorization code grant flow was there, it was more about, let's say, a user, and client here is a ColdFusion application. A user needs to access a certain thing on the certain feature or certain data point on the client or interface on the client, and then the client needs the user to be authorized. So then the client goes and returns saying, there's a redirection URL, and from the redirection URI, it basically goes to the authorization server through which the user needs to enter their credentials. And after that, they're asked for, let's say, an OTP, like an authorization code. They enter the code into the client, and the code, then again, the client goes back, rechecks this with the authorization server, and the authorization server then returns an access token, which then provides the user the access to the client, right? Now, in addition to this, previously, there was no support for refresh token. So this had to be done manually, where the token needed to be regenerated periodically to make sure the user's session could be maintained on the client for a longer time, right? But with refresh token, you don't have to do this manually. The token automatically would take care of this. So if you've generated a refresh token now with the newer function that we've provided, then this refresh token will make sure that the user's access to the client continues to remain until you want the user to be on the client and accessing the client for their work. The second flow is the client credentials flow, which is the client meaning the application itself, having the ability to access another client maybe or another application. And then again, for that also, they will need to have an access to the authorization server and then have the access token returned back. So again, the client credentials flow is where there's no interaction with the user whatsoever. An application needs to authenticate itself to, again, then access, let's say other applications or, certain services. Then they're able to do that via the client credentials flow that we'll support in the newer functions. When I said the integration that was there with the Active Directory, what this means is you will be able to create users. So you can see in this interface, there's an add user templates, add multiple users, those kind of functionalities available to be able to create a user. And not just that, when you add a user, you'll be able to specify their profile values, like their profile picture, name, school, college, anything that you want to input in terms of their data that you want to maintain. And then you need these users to have access to your applications, right? So all of that is possible with the newer features, with both the functions that we've given for managing and creating users, as well as the authentication authorization flows to authenticate these users that need to access your applications. And all of this is on cloud. So if you're developing your application entirely on cloud, it's easier for you to maintain your user base also in a tool like this, which is Active Directory, the Azure Active Directory. But yes, like if you have requirements, let's say for an integration with Okta or Google's Entity Manager or something like that, then please do reach out to us. We are supporting right now only the MS Graph one, but we're more than happy to support the other libraries also if that's a use case that we see with our customers now. With regards to security, you saw about 16 updates since the release in November 2020. Sorry for the typo there. And then in 2023, the CF 2023, there's been about 10 updates since the release. There's 50 plus issues that have been quashed. There are about 24 PCERT fixes that have made it to PCERT. When I talk about PCERT, this is the internal research team of Adobe, which has a process to report on issues consistently to us, and also make sure that we follow a certain SLA in fixing the issues. So let's say based on the criticality of the issue and also the nature of the issue, we would be required to fix it within a certain SLA, which will be again specified by the team of researchers in the PCERT team. And then these SLAs are strict and need to be adhered to, which means if we do not adhere to, we have to go public with the information that such issues are existing. And of course, like that's bad for the platform. I'm very glad to announce that over the last year, we've not missed our SLA even once. We had one 0-day issue for which, again, we were able to have a very quick turnaround in terms of fixing the issue. And this was, again, by leveraging another program of Adobe that we onboarded ourselves into, which was a private bug bounty. And then, we had a team of researchers in the private bug bounty also register for us. So we were able to leverage the program to make sure if there was any issue which was very critical, we could offload it to that team to test it out, see if we've still had any vulnerabilities with regards to the new fix that we've introduced, and then leverage that to make sure that we were able to have a quick turnaround in releasing the fix also. Not just that, with the consistent efforts that we made with the private bug bounty program, I'm very glad to also announce that we're now on the public bug bounty program, which means anybody can now register into the public bug bounty program and raise an issue to us. We'll obviously be obligated to fix it if we find that the issue is as reported and is valid. But then that's exciting because, well, you win a lot of money for reporting in issues to us. And obviously, with that, we've been having, again, a consistent stream of issues flowing into the system for us to be able to quash those and make sure there's more stability and more focus on security with regards to the overall platform. There's also more efforts into making sure we can leverage more programs provided by Adobe, which means we're looking at championships and things to introduce ColdFusion on, and then derive from there, more issues that come our way, and making sure that we quash them so that the platform is overall more stable and more secure for your use. With regards to the VS Code extension, we have newer features that have come up already in the third update, which was we introduced the debugger fixes. We certified Linux. We added support for Mac. There's also talks in terms of developing more features in the next update, which is adding the utility for detecting unscoped variables. For those of you who know, there was a security update that needed us to detect the unscoped variables, to not allow them. But we did add a JVM flag to basically allow, since there was too much effort in having everyone rewrite their applications right now. But yes, that was detected as a huge security vulnerability, and we needed to provide a utility, which is now external to the VS Code extension. It's an utility available on our helpX that you can leverage and use. But basically, it helps you detect all of the unscoped variables, and then you can fix that. But we plan to introduce that on the VS Code extension now. And there's also under consideration the introduction of an AI copilot within the extension, so that it's just easier for you to write or refactor your codes, and also put it into a code analyzer, so that if there's some things to detect from the code analyzer side of things, any functions that are newly introduced or have were breaking because of the newer changes that have gotten introduced. Maybe if we miss something through the general analysis, then we introduce that through AI so that you can have all of those reported to you. Well, this extension is completely free, unlike the builder before. So if you're not using this already, please do try your hands at it. I have a short demo of the debugger. I'm going to just play that up real quick for you. This is just about setting a breakpoint. Let's say you wrote a code for testing a certain condition, increasing the count value, and you need to set up a breakpoint on when the count was assigned a certain value, or when the variable car was So while there was an initialization happening, there's again a breakpoint that we set there. And in the car object, you can see that, again, in this function, you can see that the breakpoint is being tracked and that the count value is continuously being tracked. All right, that was a mini demo of the debugger. Please do try your hands at it. If you have any issues with regards to being able to debug your applications within the extension, now you have a debugger that can help you do that. With regards to our efforts on hardening the platform, there's 75 plus OEM upgrades that are coming into the newer release. And there's also a more proactive process to track and fix these OEM upgrades. And since, see that, every update that we release, we continue to see that is there any OEM that needs an upgrade that is potentially either impacting stability or security? Then, how do we prioritize and fix that so that it's available to you? And also you have a more stable platform overall. There's also focus on moving towards more frequent releases. With 25, we were able to cut down the release time to less than 2 years, unlike before. And there's also more efforts on making sure that there is a consistent effort towards fixing more external bugs. So we fixed about 150 external bugs in CF23, and with CF25, we plan to fix another 200 bugs so that, again, then the platform is just more stable for your use. There's 50 plus language and feature ERs that have made it to this release, which includes any destructuring in functional parameters. These are some of the list of the more important features that have come up. But then all of these were community reported feature ERs that we picked up this time around. With 2018 and 2021, you would have seen like a lot of new language additions that have come in from a perspective of, let's say, we introducing more operators, functions that are more useful and also available in other languages, now available in ColdFusion. But this time around, we made sure we prioritized more community reported features. And we fixed about 50 plus language and feature ERs. Some of them I've mentioned here, like compound assignment operators, multi-dimensional array support for JavaCast, and obviously the infamous null coalesce operator. So the middle ground that we've found for this operator is to introduce a new operator, which is the double question mark for the null coalesce operation. And there's lots of them. So I think when you get yourself into the beta program, you'll be able to try these out and then see if anything that's required more, report that to us, or tell us how it was with regards to the new additions. There's, again, a focus on performance. I think that's always been a pillar for ColdFusion, that every release that we go out with, we have to make sure that, obviously, security being one of the greatest pillars, but the second most important for us is making sure we add into the performance benefits every time we make a release happen. So this time around, we were able to add benefits around the CF HTTP function. There's about 10x improvement there. There's an improvement in QOQ as well. It's mentioned in the next slide. There's about 10 to 100x improvements in the QOQ feature, which is, again, an extensively used feature for ColdFusion. There's improvements, which you saw on the container sides, 50% startup time improvement in the containers. We've also made some efforts in making sure we can optimize the startup time overall, but there's minuscule improvement there. We will focus a little more there and see if we can get it out again in time for CF25. There's also improvement on the Tomcat startup time. We've certified the G1GC garbage collector, which is an async garbage collector provided by Java, which again adds into the runtime performance benefits, especially if you have a lot of cleanup that's happening in your applications particularly. And then there's also a community reported issue where local versus var, which means if your local variables were not as fast as your variables, then there was a issue there that we needed to fix. And that's again coming in CF25. There's also some optimizations done on the struct data structure to make sure it's more performant. So that will again make it to CF25 as a performance improvement. Now, just as a history, CF12 was 30% faster over CF11, CF13 which is CF 2018. In terms of the average run, the application runtime and the throughput was 35% faster over CF12. And with CF21, we saw a major architectural change that again led to a big performance boost. We saw that the modularization that we did with CF 2021 reduced your startup times to 5 seconds versus the 20 seconds before. Now, this modularization is where we broke down the core into the core and packages. And especially we saw that a lot of customers needn't use all of the packages to run their application. So then there was a huge improvement in the startup time if you were to use lesser packages and only the ones that you needed. And then obviously the memory footprint reduced significantly as well because of that change for the core. And of course, like if you add in the packages, there was an incremental change, but it wasn't as bad as, utilizing the entire ColdFusion, all of the packages and code put together as one single, entity. Lastly, CF25, we see the certification with G1GC, like I spoke about, a 10 to 100x optimization on QOQ, 10x optimization in the CF HTTP, 50% improvements in the startup time of CF containers, and then improvements in CF startup time, Tomcat startup time, and the local versus bar issue. Well, that brings us to the release dates of, the important dates, as we would like to call them. Well, October 24 saw the launch of the third update of VS Code. Again, there's been consistent effort in making sure there are updates out on the VS Code extension. You're going to see update 4 around the same time of 25's release as well. Then there's the CF25 beta release coming in the first week of December. There's launch webinars almost the first 2 weeks during the beta release, which are going to be in-depth coverage of all of the new features. The developers who've developed these features are going to talk about everything that they've now built for 25. Not just that, there's going to be like a lot of demos and use cases that are going to cover in these webinars. So very detailed webinars that you'll see this time around, as well as documentation and all of the code on a public Git. There's also the India Developers Summit happening on the 7th of December. So we're very excited for that as well. There are more than 200 plus registrations, and we didn't even open that many because we're hosting this in the Adobe office. But yeah, we've seen about 280 registrations already, and I think more are flowing in. There's the CF 2025 go live date, which is in the Q1 of 2025. And as we go live, we'll also be hosting a hackathon for everyone right about the end of when we launch. And that's especially so that, you can utilize the release to build something and then, learn more about what's newly introduced, so that, it's easier for you to utilize all of the newer features into your applications as well. But not just that, you're going to win exciting prizes with the hackathon. And there's something in the beta also that we have as a surprise for you. Every week, there's going to be top contributors announced. So if you're somebody who's very good at catching issues or very good at pointing out enhancements, then you're going to have a very good time during the beta with all of the prizes that are coming your way. With that, I'm on to the end of my task. I have a very small ask from the community, which is please show some love to the tracker. We would love to have you report more issues, tell us about what you need. It's our way of understanding what we have to introduce newly and what's going to basically help you utilize the platform better. You can also directly write to me that's my email ID right there, or you can share the feedback on the community page. You can also post on any of the community channels. I'm generally the team, me, the support team, all of us are watching these channels as well. So if you notice something there being posted or anything being posted on blogs around things that we need to fix, improve upon, we're looking at that as well. That just makes it harder though. But if you're doing it on tracker or adobe.com, nothing like it. It's something that we use to prioritize issues every time we're looking at, let's say, what do we build next, or what do we have to fix to make sure customers and the users are continuing to have better experience with the platform overall. And with that, I'm at the end of my talk. Thank you so much. I would like to use another Ted Lasso quote, which is to say what he said to his team. And I'm going to say, right now, all I want to do is let you know what an absolute honor it has been to work on the upcoming release and start planning for the future releases already. Getting to work with you all, meeting you all for customer inputs, interviews, roadmap sessions, and at conferences has truly been one of the best test experiences of my life. So thank you so much. Please do attend the beta for ColdFusion 2025. Opens the first week of December. Would love to have your feedback coming into the beta channels. That's it, Charlie. You can take over.
All right. With 5 minutes to spare, that, ladies and gentlemen, is a professional speaker.
Thanks, Charlie.
Good for you. So there's some comments from folks in the chat, just generally expressing appreciation, which is wonderful, and I agree.
Mhm.
and cool stuff. Any questions, anybody? I was trying to think if I'd had any that came up during the talk. Oh, one did. You mentioned at one point the some seeming modification related to support for G1 GC. And I was just curious, you're not yet changing CF 2025 to run on G1 by default. It still runs by default on the parallel GC like it always has, right?
Yes. So if you wanted to use it, however, now it's certified on it. So then, yeah, it'll work for you if you need it to.
And it's interesting because people could have changed it to do G1 in the past, but maybe you're saying there was something that until you guys made a tweak, it was not as well supported until you made that change. So that's interesting to hear. Cool. And there's some comments. Yep. Thank you all. And yep. Thank you.
Thank you so much to all of you.
Yeah. Good stuff. They're all very quiet throughout.
True. I really want you all to like come and join our beta, try out the features. I mean, like it's going to be so interesting to have the feedback come in real time. And there's still time to fix issues if we need to, right? So, or bring in more ERs if need be. So nothing like the beta to come in and like, talk about what you need.
Absolutely. And it's great that there's those. In fact, you didn't mention this, but in the pre-release, when it comes out in a couple weeks, there's also a feature request and bug tracking mechanism just within the pre-release, or at least there was in the alpha. Is that going to be the case in the beta, or would people using the public beta be expected to go to the tracker.adobe.com? I would think during the beta, even you wouldn't have people filing information about CF 2025 in the public tracker, right?
Yeah. So in the pre-release, you will have the forums and you will just need to report on anything that you see within the forums. So you don't have to use a tracker that time because the forums are all going to be active. It's going to be all actively monitored for anything that is being reported. So it's all going to be within the pre-release platform itself. Yep. But yes, sorry.
No. So yeah, just agreeing. Good. Yep. Hey, I have a question for everybody. I noticed several of you came on only in about the last 10 minutes. So if any of you maybe had your calendars wrong and you thought the meeting was coming up in 2 minutes, it was at noon Eastern. I try to make that really clear everywhere where I announce it, but of course somebody else could post it and not indicate the time zone. But if you did come in late, all the CF Meetup meetings are recorded and they're on YouTube. And you who are here, this URL you're looking at is the meeting URL. And right now you're watching, if you're watching it live, you're seeing the tail end of it. You can, of course, rewind all the way to the beginning if you'd like. But when we're done, then this same URL will be the meeting recording that people could share if they want to share with people, hey, here's the recording. And then if you notice, I have a playlist for all the meetup recordings, and I link to that everywhere as well. And so it's good to give out the playlist so people can see that there's more sessions than just this one most recent one. We've got them going back to 2015 here, 10 years, coming up on 10 years, and 20 years total for the meetup.
Oh, congratulations, Charlie.
You bet.
What's the date? What's the?
It'll be sometime next year. I'll do some sort of, announcement when it's coming up, but I don't remember exactly when it was. Just to real quick, if anybody wonders. So Stephen Erat, who worked for Macromedia at the time, had created it in 2005. And in 2006, he wanted to move on, and I stepped in and took it. So I've run it since 2006. But technically, it's 20th birthday. It'll be coming up next year.
Oh, that's so cool, Charlie.
That's why we have 311 of these.
Yeah, and so consistent. So yeah.
Well, there's Steve. Hey, Stephen is here. Welcome, Stephen. Cool.
Hey. All right.
The man himself. And isn't that great to see so many old faces still around? Well, faces that are former, long time ago CF people. We don't want to say he's old. And he's a photographer, so he's very much into what faces look like.
Yeah, but do attend the conferences because the conferences this time around were so good, right? Like this time around, we had such a good engagement going on throughout the conference. So I feel it was like it was so nice to actually see you all. So it's been like the third conference for me so far on the ColdFusion, the Adobe ColdFusion conference that I've been attending. The first one I did last year for in Vegas. And I remember meeting all of you, and I remember having like a sit down with Charlie for an hour.
It was lunch. It was lunch. Come on.
Yeah, I remember so I remember that Charlie has a muffin with his lunch every day. So sorry about that, Charlie. But yeah,
But it was lovely. Thank you.
yeah. But then we spoke so much about like the improvements that were needed on the platform, and so much history that I needed to get myself acquainted with, and which is very much just available with you all because you've been using the platform a lot longer. Nearly like almost everyone was like 20 years into the platform. So there's so much to learn from these conferences and network and like talk about. So maybe this time around I get to see more people into the conference. That'll be exciting.
Amen. And it's good to see, the folks that are around all that time often bring great, wisdom and experience. And of course, that's always a two-edged sword. Some want to say that people are stuck in their legacy ways, but sometimes you need people keeping the fires burning on things that have continued to work well. And then the wonderful thing about CF 2025 and your efforts particularly, and Adobe's in particular more recently, is, keeping it more and more modernized, adding more and more capabilities. So it's just such a shame. There's some, the old stories about ColdFusion being dead and legacy, they just don't go away. There's always people that say that. And yet if they just look at how things have evolved in each of the releases, it's just so different.
So last time around was such an active CF summit calendar for us. We had the CF Online Summit. We also revived the India Developer Summit last time around post-COVID. We did the Malaysia Summit as well last time around for customers there. And then we had both of our East and West conferences. So it was an exciting calendar from the perspective of promoting and meeting more of our customers and making sure we're acquainting them with what's coming and then building also alongside what's needed. So from that perspective, it was a very, very interesting year for ColdFusion, and I think we're going to keep the same momentum up as we go along. So yeah,
and you had better momentum. It's clear you guys are doing some great things to improve that momentum. Hey, while you mentioned the summit, especially the Summit West in Vegas, for those who don't know here, coming in January, February-ish timeframe, there will almost certainly be a CF Summit Live where they have the speakers that presented at CF Summit are asked to give their talks again live. So those will be on an Adobe organized set of webinars. So they won't be here on the meetup. And that's why I don't have the presenters from the event repeating here on the meetup, because they will present again in January, February timeframe. And news will be announced on all the appropriate places, from the Adobe community forums to the coldfusion.adobe.com to the Slack channel and all those places that Charvi mentioned. So keep your eyes out. There will be, those, and that'll be in addition to the many that are going to be done about the same time frame for CF 2025 in particular. So lots of great stuff to learn and watch out for.
Yes, please do attend as much as you can. If you're not able to make it to the actual conferences, like Charlie said, there's the online conferences that are the online summit that's going to cover a lot of those sessions as well. But yeah, if you can make it to the conferences, like the East, if that's closer to you, or the West one, it's going to be so much nicer to actually meet you in person and learn from you. So please do try and attend. And yeah, that's pretty much the end of this session, I guess.
You bet. We can wrap up in just a moment. I just want to point out, Roman mentioned the CF camp in Germany, and absolutely we should mention that as well. And there are ColdFusion talks there, and it's people from all over Europe. So it's a wonderful event. So just show them some love, absolutely. And just keep an eye out. That's at cfcamp.org. I believe they're soon about to open their call for speakers. But anyway, you can already find out about the next event coming up in mid to next year. So Yes, Europe. Kevin, did I say something wrong when I said Europe? You asked the question. It's in Germany, but I said it's attended by people in Europe. And also from other places. I've seen some other, and of course the US, and I think some folks from India. Yeah, we've seen folks from India at the CF camp as well. Anyway. Cool. All right. Well, then we won't keep Charvi anymore. Thank you very much for coming on and giving the talk. We'll look forward to, if you ever want to have another one, we'd always welcome it.
Yeah, sure, Charlie. I would love to. It was so nice to actually host this session. Thank you for having me. And see you all. I really hope to see you all at the beta program first week of December.
Amen.
So that's my closing
all right,
remarks.
Man.
Thank you.
All right. Oh, and real quick, Kevin was. Yeah, Kevin, you stopped sharing your screen, but Kevin just said, no, I was just wondering about an Adobe event. So yeah, I wasn't referring to any Adobe organized event in Europe. No. And Charvi, you would agree that there's none that you know of currently?
Yeah, not yet.
Yeah.
So I was, so.
Keep your ears out open. You never know what might change.
I don't know what might change.
All right, y'all. I'll let you go. Talk to you later.
All right. Thank you.
You bet.
Bye.
Bye.